All right, if you will look at your agenda, I want to just give a few reminders because some of you are pretty far behind. I don't think it's any of you that attend the sessions, but I want to make sure that if you've got any of these people in your groups, just remind them they really need to get busy. If you don't have 80% of your work completed at the end of this class, they're not going to let us give incompletes. There hasn't been any new weather issues or bad weather issues like we had last semester. So they were very lenient last semester, but they're not going to be. So please work to get caught up. Use your weekends to get things completed. I am behind in getting all of the tasks looked at because a bunch were turned in over the weekend. I was caught up on Thursday night with the task. I just had a few things left to do with the classes, but I'm way behind right now. So I'm working on it a little at a time every day. The other thing is, one of the reasons I'm going to introduce you to the things in the CAAP is because of the fact that's one of the ones to be done this summer. You have such a short period of time. The class for the summer is, I think it's 10 weeks. It starts around the week either of Memorial Day or right before or right after, and then it goes until around the last week in July. So it is a very short span of time, and so anything you can get done between the sessions and early on will help you with getting your tasks completed. So I wanted to make sure that you understand what I'm trying to do with introducing the stuff with the CAAP. Now, all of the CAAP, just task one has to be done this semester, but I want to get you started with the others, so I'll be doing those next week. Before we get into the presentations, what I want to look at is the SCIP. Now, the task 4, if you look in the directions, it mentions that you are to reflect on both the CAAP and the SCIP, but guess what? You all haven't done the CAAP. This was actually a set of directions, and they've sort of moved around when you complete the various tasks. So I would wait and finalize task 4 after I'd have done task 1 of the CAAP. That way, if something comes up, you can reflect on both of them. But remember, don't get the competency folio and these reflections for the tasks mixed up. Do not get them mixed up. Dr. Tillman has given you a folder of what they're recommending that comes from the various artifacts that you do to go in your folio. It doesn't go in your task. Your task is your reflection. It's your thoughts, and you are tying together the course content, the artifact development, and the internship. So that's what you're reflecting on. Those 3 things, and you also have to do all 21 over the semester. Well, you did 12 back in the development of the OMA. So you are still, according to the rubric, to do 12 this semester. Not this semester, but this part of the semester while you're working on the SCIP and the CAAP. But you focus on the ones you did not do during the development of the OMA, and then you use 2 or 3 of the ones that you did, or whatever it takes to get to the 12. Your evaluators only have the rubric to go by. They don't know what Dr. Lamb has told you to do or what various ones have told you to do. That's why I always go back to the rubric and say, you know, if it says 12, don't go try to do 8 or 9 because that's all you didn't use the last time. Do all 12. So do I need to say anything else about task 4? Okay, the directions basically are not that different. The only thing is I would recommend that you do at least task 1 of the CAAP before you submit the task 4, or at least have your rough draft done, so that if there is something that you do in task 1 of the CAAP, you can reflect on it, because you do have to have this one finished this semester. Now, yes, ma'am.
And is it okay though if we, if all of our task 4 is about the SCIP and we don't wait on the?
I think it's going to be fine, because if you actually look under the rubric itself, it doesn't specify that. It's just in directions that it specifies it. So I think you'll be okay. If not, they'll send it back and they'll tell you to do 1 or 2. So I wouldn't get excited about it, but I would go ahead and try to finish it.
Because the next paper will also have the task 4 to do the same thing?
No, the CAAP does not have anything at all as far as reflections. So that's one of the reasons that they tried to tie it together in this one, but I think they've taken them out of order and completed it a little bit differently when they were doing your particular program. I don't think, unless they've added it and changed it, the CAAP, you do not have reflections. Just the SCIP.
Thank you.
All right, anything else before I move on to the CAAP? All right, you know that the SCIP was looking at what? What was it looking at?
Communication.
Communication. It was looking at how the teachers view things, how the staff views things, and how the community views things. And the community includes your parents. And you were looking for that disconnect. You know, what is the disconnect between the way the school looks at things and the parents? And that's the gap that you're trying to fulfill with your short-term and your long-term goals. Well, the CAAP is the Cultural Advocacy Action Plan. It is looking at the climate in your school. And that is all it's looking at, is the climate in your school. Now, if you're in North Carolina, you've really got it made. You're not trying to make up new stuff. The only thing would be if you're in a brand new school and there's not ever been a teacher working conditions survey done in your school. But there are 5 areas out of the teacher working conditions survey that you're to look at: empowerment, leadership, facilities, resources, and time. That's the only 5 areas you look at. But they want to see those 5 areas. South Carolina, you probably have something very similar, or at least you can find something similar in
leadership.
Some of the different surveys that are done for the various programs that you do. So what you're looking for are those 5 topics: empowerment, leadership, facilities, resources, and time. So the needs assessment is the first of 3 analyses that you're going to do as you are looking at the Cultural Advocacy Action Plan. And if you look at prompt 1 at the bottom, it says you will include data related to the 5 areas identified by the North Carolina State Board of Education. Now, and I've already went over those 5. Now, if you are in South Carolina, try to find something that matches. Now, if there is an example of what some of these statements are in one of the links for this week's work, so make sure that you go and look at that if you are in South Carolina, or you don't have any kind of survey that's already been done that matches those 5 topics. But hopefully you've got one that does have a match to it. Now,
Dr. Todd, can you repeat that again for South Carolina? Where did you say to go look?
I said there is a link of the kinds of statements that are in the North Carolina Teacher Working Conditions Survey that you can go and look at the kinds of questions, and then you can match to, it may be your advanced ed, because I know Dr. Lamb has referenced that before. So it may be some of those surveys, or it may be some of the information that you've used in some of your Title I plans and some of those others. But that you can look at those, but you're looking for those 5 topics: empowerment, leadership, facilities, resources, and time. And that's what you're looking for.
So I have a question about the advanced ed, because it was referred to last semester, and I've asked all administrators at my school, no idea what I'm talking about. So what I've been using, it's called a South Carolina Department of Education Teacher Opinion Survey, which has the different categories. I'm not sure if I'll check the link that you just mentioned, but I'm not sure if it has those same types of questions. And that is the only survey that my school is familiar with.
Then that's probably, you're going to have to use what you've got.
Okay.
You know, this is not one that you're expected to create a lot of stuff. So, you know, it's looking at things that are available to you. And it just has to match those 5 areas. So Dr. Lamb is the one that kept talking about the advanced, was it advanced ed?
Yes, ma'am.
I did see something recently on somebody's paper where they...
I think it may depend on the school or your district,
okay.
Because there's another colleague of mine that is in the program. She's a semester behind me. So she is also asked, and one thing, we have a first-year principal at our school, but no one knows anything about advanced ed.
Okay, all right. But if you can find
I was going to say, Dr. Todd, sorry for the background noise, but just to mention real quick, I'm in South Carolina, and advanced ed is part of the every 5-year accreditation that South Carolina schools have to do. And so if your school hasn't done it recently, it should be coming up.
Okay.
But my school did it last year, so luckily I have all of that information because we just did it. But it's usually on a 5-year rotation when advanced ed comes in and runs the accreditation for the district.
Okay. All right. Did South Carolina people hear that? And thank you so much.
Yes,
That's good
ma'am.
information to have. So
Thank you.
have to go 4 to 5 years back or 3 to 4 years back to find the information. But
So would it be okay to use data that's 5 years old if we're talking about empowerment and leadership?
you could look at that and then look at what you found and see if there's been much difference. And if you've got a new administrator, it's going to be different regardless. Even 2 years old is not accurate when you've got new leadership.
Right.
But you have to use what you've got and just make sure you reference where you got your information from.
Okay. Thank you.
And the other thing is you can, as you look at that list, if we have time, we'll look at it about your facilities and safe schools. That can give you an idea on the facilities part as to, you know, what kind of facilities you have that would be connected to the climate. Is it easy to use? Is it safe? You know, all of those kinds of things. All right, the second prompt is you're to come up with a needs assessment based on the results of the data that you found in prompt 1. And this needs assessment should include a background description. You've heard that one before. Your clear statement of the purpose. You've heard that before. List of your participants. You've heard that one before. And then you go through the analysis of the findings. What did you find when you when you found the information? And then what kind of recommendations would you make that identify strategies that will help lead your school to a safer, more culturally diverse environment for teaching and learning? That's where you want to be. And then I give you the information about being proficient. You have to clearly reference the teacher work conditions survey or what other data sources you can find that relate to empowerment, leadership, facilities, resources, and time. And you have to reference, in your needs assessment, you have to reference the data analysis. You have to show collaboration. And then you make your recommendations. So I asked the question, when it says analysis, what does that mean? You don't just list it. You actually study and examine something carefully in a methodical way, and then you look at that data in that manner. And what does it mean for a needs assessment? It's a systematic process for determining and addressing needs or gaps between current conditions and where you want to be. So hopefully that will be enough information that can get you started on those. Any questions? I know I went over it quickly, but I'm trying to honor your time, and I know we've got these case studies to talk about.
Dr. Todd,
Yes,
can you speak to the portion on the CAAP that talks about strategies that will help lead the school to a safer, more culturally diverse environment. Can you speak to the culturally diverse environment? And I'm coming from a school that's not culturally or diverse.
Okay.
It's a very
well, but you may not be ethnically diverse, but I would guarantee you that your students are diverse in their abilities in the school.
Okay, so I'm not really reading it that way. So I'm reading it as culturally diverse. So are you calling culture as in their academic abilities, and then
remember this whole thing is dealing with climate. So
okay.
Are all the people in your school, regardless of what their ethnicity is, are they all comfortable being there? Do they feel like they can ask for help when they need it? So I think if you don't have a diverse group of people, then you have to go back and look at what is different and what you can comment on and deal with diversity to make it a better place for all of your children.
Okay.
Your case study tonight, some parents would not be happy with the fact that you have special needs students in your school. All right. Are all children accepted? Are all people wanted? Does it matter what grade level you work with, or is there little clusters and little cliques, or does everybody work together? So when you don't have the ethnicity, that's good to start with. But if you don't have that, then you have to break down the layers to see what it is that you're trying to make the climate better for everybody, so that anybody who walks into your school is going to feel comfortable. And that includes new teachers right out of college who are scared to death. All right, any other questions? All right, let's start with your presentation. And I picked up in the middle from the time we did it the last time. So group 3, section C4, who's going to do that and share your screen?
I think that's my group, and I'm going to share my screen. This is Kathleen here, so let me do that. All right. Can you see my,
I can see you, but I can't see your screen yet.
Uh-oh.
There we go.
Okay. All right. Good. Learning this stuff. Okay. So for our group, oh my goodness, I'm about to have a 4-year-old come in.
That's okay.
Okay. Sorry. Temper tantrum. Okay. Anyway, for our group, we came together and we discussed our case study here. And the first question was, how might the principal approach this and future meetings with her teachers? Is it necessary to choose one approach over the other? We said for the principal, for that initial meeting, we felt that it was important for her to just kind of gather some information, to listen to her staff, to kind of hear why certain teachers are maybe more passionate about one methodology versus the other, the mainstreaming versus inclusion, and just, again, gather information from her staff so she kind of has a better idea of how to proceed. As far as future meetings, we did say that, and this is what one of the things that the PowerPoint referenced, is that it's important for the staff to really come together and discover together a general consensus or a philosophy for how the school's integration program should operate. We did say that it's important for her to remind teachers that along this way, there might be some disagreement, but that if on the end they're all focused on what's best for all children, then they're going to get a good consensus in the end. As far as is it necessary to choose one approach over the other, I will say we kind of thought that it was interesting that she thought she had an integrated program, but yet did not necessarily know what was happening in the classrooms. But that might be a discussion for later on, because we said that it appears both inclusion The second grade classroom was the example of that. And mainstream approach, the fourth grade classroom was the example of that, were being used in the school. But we did feel as a team that just simply for consistency in service delivery and for the EC students, that it is going to be better overall to at least pick one as a baseline. But we did, again, as a team, say that one of the important things to always remember is that a solid IEP will drive those decisions when it comes time for the individual student. So rather than paint this broad brush of all kids are going to be inclusion or all kids will be mainstream, it's important to maybe have a baseline foundation, but then of course tailor the individual needs to the students in their IEP. We said for her to move forward, and this kind of follows into the next question, that after they come together as a staff to develop a consensus, it's important that they bring everybody to the table and that it's a collaborative process and that the principal does not initiate a top-down directive. And I can speak to that in our district. That's been an issue with inclusion, is that it's been the EC department saying this is what you will do, and teachers are struggling with that. What's the next path? Again, after the staff comes together to kind of form this new philosophy for their integrated program, it's time to then bring in other stakeholders and other community members, which would include parents of both EC students and parents of non-EC students, so that they could come together and determine a good approach for the school. One of the things that we did discuss was the importance of the principal telling the parents up front some of the non-negotiables, because as we imagined, probably some parents of non-EC students, if they don't live in that world, they're not necessarily familiar with what the law says. And so for her to kind of establish this ground rule that the least restrictive environment will always begin with the regular education classroom, and then students who need services beyond that would have a continuum to meet their individual needs. But again, we said that that's important for her to lay the foundation, especially maybe for some of the non-EC parents that are out there. If this community decides to go in the direction of inclusion, we did say that it was pretty apparent from the faculty already that there would be a need for some intensive PD with the teachers and the staff to really look at what inclusion is and how it should be implemented. The PowerPoint did say that if a staff was to do inclusion, it does require restructuring of the school's EC program. So that would be the next step of that process. We also said that kind of as Sylvia as the example, that some of her strategies are not necessarily bad strategies, but they shouldn't be the only strategies that she's using in her classroom. So therefore, and this ties back to the PD, but therefore the teachers really need to learn about a variety of different teaching approaches that can be used when implementing an inclusion classroom, whether that's co-teaching, whether it's a mixture of hetero and homogeneous groups, or team teaching, whatever it might be. But teachers should be exposed to some of the different ways in which inclusion can look. As far as the question of is one point of view more correct than another and why, the PowerPoint seemed to indicate that there's pros and cons to really both. So neither is necessarily more correct. However, I think some of the limited amount of evidence and research that's out there does seem to point more towards inclusion as being kind of the best of both worlds. And the reason we said that it was that in the mainstream classroom, the expectation is that your EC students have to keep up. The benefit there, though, is that they do receive their specialized instruction provided by their specialist in their own dedicated time. In the inclusion classroom, the goal there is to meet every student where they are, which we think is a huge benefit. The services come to the students rather than the students pulled out or singled out and having to go to a specialized class. But in the case of kind of what's happening in our district right now, again, inclusion is not necessarily being implemented as it should be. And so there have been some questions about, are the services actually truly being implemented. So that's just something that we've seen in our district here. We said that the special needs students can benefit from being in a classroom with their peers and collaborating, not just academically, but in terms of some of the social skills that they need. What actions might Sylvia take with the family? We said that given her reaction to her principal, this might not be the time to put her in front of a crowd of people, but she does certainly need to get some information from the parents and hear their feedback. So we said maybe set up a parent survey so that she can get their feedback, but then she can kind of digest that on her own time. And we said that one of the things that might help her, and it could be twofold, but having the students kind of keep track of their own progress, whether that's collecting their work samples in their own portfolio or tracking their data in data notebooks. But the idea here was that either Sylvia will see that maybe her strategies are not effective and that she's not serving all of her students, or the flip side is that the parents will be relieved because they'll be seeing the data and they'll be seeing that students are in fact growing in their work. So again, we said maybe using data notebooks or possibly a digital portfolio like Seesaw. And we just said having open communication with the Google Classroom or a possible website, brag tags, and other methods of sharing good news. What kind of collaboration from the children's family might the principal and teachers propose? Again, we said invite the families to be part of the whole collaborative process in developing the special education program. Some districts out there implement what's called Parent PD as professional development for parents so that they better understand a variety of issues and a variety of things in the classroom. And so they can understand teaching strategies, they can maybe get a better sense of special education and what that should and shouldn't look like. Again, we talked about implementing student portfolios and data notebooks, and then encouraging parent and teacher conversations and conferences to discuss concerns and discuss the students' achievements in the classroom. And then, finally, as the expert, what might Ishmael do to integrate and create harmony? We said that if he's respected, he can kind of maybe take the lead on this and become the lead researcher on best practices in terms of EC delivery, and that he can conduct walkthroughs and kind of go in and out of classrooms to see what's working in some classrooms, what's working in others, track data to see if there's any data that lends itself towards one way or the other. And he can help set up peer observations so that the teachers can go in and see how other teachers are implementing either inclusion or mainstream, and that he could lead a committee of teacher leaders so that they can work together with the stakeholders to develop and implement a school-wide special education program.
All right, any questions for her group? All right, at the very end, I will ask some questions for all of your groups, but we'll go on to the next group, which is Group 3 of Section C2. Who is that?
Dr. Todd, I'm not sure. I think we're C4, but it's all good either way. All right, so I'm gonna share my screen. No, not that one, this one. Okay. We're gonna jump in, and a few of my group is gonna jump in as well. Okay, so question one, we felt that prior to meeting, she should prepare, the principal should prepare and get feedback and have some information and data before she actually meets to kind of have a good idea of what all of her facts. She needs to gather the facts from both the parents and the teachers and have data. She asked Ishmael for feedback, but did not allow him to get back to her with the feedback that she could have to use. And it seemed like she kind of got emotional at certain points in that meeting. And she, you gotta keep it in check, stay neutral, so that your second one, the path she should take forward is definitely get the feedback from Ishmael. Additional training for staff in any rate. We put on the PowerPoint the public law from the IDEA Act to make sure that the teachers understood what the students had a right to, just in case there were any questions, so that everybody would know. And we think that developing a survey that would address teacher issues and concerns and analyze the data to address the issues so that everyone's concerns could be listened to and heard. And Clarence is going to pick up for the next slide.
Okay, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Question 3 is was one of one point of views more than correct? Does the others correct others, correct any others, and why? We came up with each side has a valid concern. Well, you have your parents where they're concerned about their kids, because if the study group profession, some of the parents were very concerned for their kids performing well, because they would like to go perform well standardized tests so their kids can go to better schools so they can have a better opportunity to get a better education. And let's see, but we did not conclude that one was better than the other, because after the principal got her info from Ishmael, you had teachers was like, no, we should concentrate more on the kids that are not special needs. But you have other teachers like saying that we should we should consider the special needs too, because all of them combined, because if they do well with their performance on the testing, then that makes the school look good. We agreed that the correct viewpoint is that what works for the school and for the students. I mean, despite anything else, of course, for our parents, that's always concerns always going to be the number one top priority. But also the top number one priority is what's best for our students, and also for their welfare, and also for their academic performance. And everything must be within the law and focus on all students being successful. Because when you have you have teachers, you have students that advance more than others, and then also there's also responsibility to make sure that the teachers help the kids that are performing under academic performance, to make sure that they are at least to perform up to the level based on what the objective is for their lessons, not just so much for the standardized testing, but to help also the ideas where they can help them succeed. But I firmly believe that everyone learns differently.
And I agree with you.
Next question, what kind of collaboration with the children's family and the principal and the teachers might propose? We thought about a family meet and greet. One of the things they were having is some of the parents they were thinking their children were being left behind, but maybe if the parents could see how the children act together and how they work together, it may ease some of those concerns. So it could be something like that, and allow the parents to have a survey which they can express their areas of concern that would give the schools some data on how to address it. And then you could address those concerns at family night or a PTO meeting through some interactive workshops to kind of help bridge that gap and show the diversity. And we always have the golden nugget of food if your budget. Pauline is going to take the next slide.
The question 5, as an expert in the area of learning and evaluations, what might Ishmael, the technical coordinator, do to integrate and create some harmony at the differences in opinions among teachers? We felt it's really important to create an interactive and professional development to have teachers engage with all students. My background is in special ed. I think it's differentiated teaching is so important. I think a lot of teachers really don't understand the importance of differentiated teaching for children, and the importance of that and how it falls into the classroom management. Providing research and data on both point of views and concerns, creating PLCs to work towards common grounds. I think it's important, a lot of collaboration between staff and administrators, as well as a lot of points from home, just to kind of go back to question 4, and just having that relationship with the parent as a teacher, back for even like the meet and greet, it's so important. We do, my school kind of takes on Ron Clark's theory of going to visit the homes prior to the children's even starting the classroom. And we kind of get a feel of home and how it is and what's working. So all these parents' concerns are coming to us prior to the child even entering our classroom. That kind of gives me and all the other teachers an idea of what we're working on and how that child's not going to be left behind, whether they need some more AIG work or they need that differentiated teaching and that specialized instruction. Again, where we're at, number 6. Okay. The question number 6 is, what actions might Sylvia take with the families? Again, we do all connect night, and that's something I think that was really, really effective, having a monthly family night, and that's done once a week, and we'll do it late, 5:30, 6 o'clock. And that's a time we just kind of, like in the beginning of the year, I'll kind of take a survey. Each of the teachers and each of the grades do this. We'll take a survey of what's important to how many parents. With this survey, I kind of have an idea of what topics I'm going to address. And that monthly family night is just for that. The scheduled parent-teacher conferences, we do the FSP, and we'll do it in the community if they don't feel comfortable coming to their home. Creating that relationship with the parents, I'm big on that, especially in a self-contained room. Early intervention is my background. I think it's really important. We just, like the family feels that we're building this house together. I think it's important that we kind of get that across to parents, that we're all doing this because we love what we do. We're not doing it for the money. And I think if that comes off in the beginning of the year, whatever criticism, where it may seem like it's criticism, it's not so much. It's taken as, I'm here to help. The monthly progress reports, that's a great way to kind of keep the parents up to date and kind of let them know where they're at. So we're not letting them know in the ending of the year that they're looking to get retained, and invite parents to visit class during instruction. That was a biggie. That was wonderful, because a lot of the parents said, well, I couldn't believe that. That's so cool. Or that was a nice way to do it. And that, especially with my children, with the kids on the spectrum, it really, really, just to model that, that behavior and model that strategy and implement it and show them exactly how it's done makes a world of a difference.
All right. I think that's it.
Okay. All right. Any questions for their group? All right. The next group is the section C4, group 2. And I know there was one group that had not had a chance to meet, and I told them they could do it at our next meeting, but I don't remember which group that was. So is anyone here from group 2, section C4?
Yes,
okay.
We're here.
All right.
All right, hold on. Let me share my screen. Share. Okay. Is it? All right, sorry. Okay, so we're going to just go ahead and get started with the questions. How might the principal approach this and future meetings with her teachers? Is it necessary to choose one approach over the other? We decided that everything is a case-by-case basis. The principal should meet with the teacher and ask her about her motives. The teacher needs to also explain how the more advanced students' needs are being met. And the principal should also monitor the teacher's lesson plans and classroom performance. So now, I guess by what they were saying is that she didn't know what was going on in the classroom. She shouldn't already know what was going on, because she should have observations and things like that within the classrooms. My group members are gonna chime in at any time.
Yeah, we feel like some of the other groups too, in that she may not necessarily need to choose one approach over the other, or at least show that she preferred one approach over the other, but come from more of a I'm trying to help you kind of approach.
Okay, for the next one, what is the path that Eugenia should take? We said that Eugenia should know what is going on in the school, and she should have Sylvia observe other classrooms where teachers are teaching all students, not only the students with disabilities, to view other strategies and practices that she could possibly implement in her classroom. Let's see. Okay, and for number 3 is one point of view more correct than the other, and why? We do not feel that one point of view is more correct than the other. All teachers have valid points of view, but some teachers have more substantial evidence to support their point of view. Anyone wants to jump in on that?
I guess it really just depends on the teacher training and the relationship that the teachers have with their students. And we're not quite sure that Sylvia has that, because she seemed a little distant from her students with what was going on, or maybe the parents felt like she was distant because of the fact that the other peer tutors were doing more than what they thought than the teacher was doing, and thought the teacher should be doing more.
Okay, and for question 4, what kind of collaboration from the children's families might the principal and the teacher propose in order to improve the inclusion education program, encourage and appreciation for diversity, and stimulate learning for all the students at the school? There could be a curriculum night where there are student-led stations. There should be professional development so the teachers are all on the same page and teaching the same standards.
And not only that, they just have a toolbox of strategies to pull from, because, you know, you might teach, it might be direct instruction with one lesson, but one lesson may be more collaborative, just to be able to differentiate within the classroom to hit all learners.
And then as far as the curriculum night is concerned, with the student-led stations, the parents that were thinking that their students weren't learning anything because of all the peer tutoring that they're doing, this is the opportunity for those students to really show what they know.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And question 5, as an expert in the area of learning and evaluation, what might Ishmael, the technical coordinator, do to integrate and create some harmony out of the differences in opinion among the teachers? We said he could meet with the teachers during a PLT or PLC. Teachers could share ideas and develop lesson plans that are uniform. And we had a question, are there coaches that could help with the lesson plans and model lessons in the classrooms? I know most of our schools have the instructional coaches or technology coaches and things like that. So that means that they can come in and help them at any point in time. And I know at my school, we have vertical PLCs where there's a representative from each grade level. And we all talk about what we're doing in our classrooms, and they'll tell us what they're doing so that we'll learn from them, and also we'll know what to teach our kids to get them better prepared for the next grade level.
And while we were talking about this, and can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I was still on mute. But we were wondering, since this is a smaller school, do they even have PLCs and PLTs? And, you know, if they don't, then, you know, some of their planning time should be devoted towards, you know, working on standards and developing like lesson plans. You know, with these classes, regardless if they have inclusion kids or not, there's standards to be taught. And if they can talk about the lesson plans, and then, you know, we have like literacy coaches, math coaches, but, you know, they all come in and they can help model lessons. You know, Sylvia might not be comfortable with teaching kids that are higher or that need that push and that intervention. You might be used to teaching kids that need more of the remediation.
Well, and when inclusion first started, it wasn't necessarily an all-day situation. And you would have the EC teacher who would go into the classroom, and you'd actually have 2 teachers during the time, and many times in putting the students together, you would put the children that were all LD or they needed an EC teacher, you would put them in the same classroom so that they could come in and provide that extra set of hands. And that usually worked really well, and people did not get a bad feeling about it, because you had 2 teachers who were working with all the children, and so they got the benefit of it. So sometimes you have to step back from what is currently being proposed and look at other ways of doing it that might be a little bit more acceptable or easier maybe. And the other piece is, in smaller school systems, they may not have the resources to have the coaches. It might be one central office person that's assigned to several schools. So they don't get there very often. So it just depends on the resources that's available to them as to what they can actually do.
And that's what I said in Wake County, where I'm at, that we have the co-teaching situation where the EC teacher comes into the classroom. It's called ICR. And so they come in, and most of the kids with IEPs are in my ICR class. And so there's 2 of us in there to kind of help. And a lot of times, I was saying to my group that a lot of times teachers don't do that right, because sometimes the spec ed teacher is kind of like a teacher assistant, but my spec ed teacher and I literally want him to co-teach with me, and not it just be me and he does whatever.
And you hit the real important point when you were talking about that. Both teachers should be teaching, and one should not be feeling like they are an assistant. And I do know it works, because the school system, when I was a principal, I had that situation with my 6th grade group, and I had the EC teacher go in, and those teachers planned together, and she was in there every day when they were doing that class, or that, and she was doing it mainly for English, I think. And those children had the highest test scores in the county when it came to the writing scores that year. And there was maybe one AIG kid in the whole thing, and a whole lot more LD. So I know it works. But you have to have the right teacher personalities, and you have to have both of them in there doing their job, and they have to be able to get along with each other as well as with the students. But when it works, it is a beautiful outcome.
Phenomenal. We had about a 30-minute conversation after the conversation about that last night.
Yeah, because I've never heard of that before. We don't have that at our school. We just send our kids to their resource class. So we didn't know anything about, me and Kelly, I think. We didn't have that in our school. So this was something fascinating to me.
Yeah, Latia and I are at elementary, and then Andrea and Nashila are at middle schools. So we don't only have one recording for you to watch, but we have 2, because we have so much to talk about.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Okay, for question number 6, our final question, what actions might Sylvia take with the families of the children in question in order to learn and share the achievements and experiences they have observed among the children? We said we will hope that Sylvia would listen to the parents' concerns, and she needs to set up student-led conferences where students have the opportunity to share their work, goals, etc., with their parents.
And that's another thing that I know works really well when it's done correctly, is student-led conferences. And it will get parents into the buildings that usually don't come if the children are excited about it. Yeah. So I believe strongly in that, as well as the inclusion when it's done correctly. All right, is that all from your group?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let's move on to section 2, group 2. Who is that?
Dr. Todd, I believe that's our group, and we're the ones that emailed
Okay.
and said we would need to
That's
reschedule
next week.
or meet next week. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. All right, section 2, section C2, group 1. With that one.
That's our group, I believe. I'll go ahead and share my screen, and then other members of our group are going to share. Hang on, I gotta figure out which. Oh. Can you guys see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, I think I'm going to start and do a couple of the slides. This was the question concerning is one approach better than the other, and we just determined that one isn't better than the other. It's going to depend on what's happening in your building and with your students, and the approach and the leadership from that. We also talked about more data collection needs to happen, but we talked about before the data collection how the principal I think had a light kind of turned on to what was going on in the building. We didn't have a strong feeling that the principal really knew what was happening in those classrooms, and that there were such differing opinions between different teachers. So with that being said, there's an opportunity there to dig in a little bit more and have conversations with your staff and lead the ship. The principal needs to have a clear direction of what the vision is for her school and what inclusion should look like in her building, and that's where professional development really needs to happen. Thank you, Kyra. So more conversations around the special needs, more professional development. It's a good opportunity to do a bookstore study, to have perhaps experts in special education from the district come in and talk to the staff around that topic, and then just have some roundtable discussions and letting teachers share their knowledge and expertise around differentiation and what's happening in their classrooms. Let's see, I think that was it, wasn't it, Kyra?
Yeah, I think that was it for those parts. And then, a lot of what we have is exactly what everyone else has said already. So I'll just kind of go a little bit fast. The point of view, it's important as a leader to look at all sorts of point of views, and data is so important. So just looking as a leader, what does the data tell you when looking at the different strategies that are being used, and what are the pros and the cons of all of those in order to make a great solution that's best for the students and best for most parties involved, if not all parties, which we know can't always happen. We talked about the collaboration with the parents' families is important, because obviously those parents were upset, and so what can they do to make that parental contact better? The more contact, the better. Maybe some learning sessions for the family. We talked about maybe an inclusion night or literacy night, kind of helping families understand what inclusion is and why it's so important for all students, that even our gen ed kids really do gain from inclusion practices and ways that works to teach the families about it. Asking the students, I don't recall any of the anything in the case study saying anyone actually asked the students in these situations how they felt about their learning. So getting the students involved, and maybe the students sharing why they like either side of the view, and an Exceptional Children newsletter so that parents know what's going on from our Exceptional Children side. The technical coordinator can pull more data. Again, back to that data for the group. He can, depending on what we were kind of confused what an actual technical coordinator's role was. So if he was there to help with technology, he could use some of those blended learning strategies. But if he was there as a kind of like a facilitator, or could he coach? Could he go in and show some teachers how you use blended learning or how you use inclusion more effectively in classrooms so that all parties could benefit? And then we talked about Sylvia's next steps, that ask maybe they could ask Sylvia to be a teacher leader and really showcase how she works with differentiation in her classroom and how she really includes all her students, kind of getting. And I think when you do that, you're also asking the teacher to reflect on their own practice, which could in turn maybe help her to see other ways that she could improve in her own classroom. And then we lastly, kind of like the last group was saying, we had great conversation near the end that I don't think we included in our recording, but just about like what would we really do if we were the principal, and and we kind of really just all talked about putting ourselves in these shoes and what our steps would be and how we could help our schools to value the input of our exceptional children teachers as experts, and how we could rely better on them.
And Dr. Todd, too, I was just curious, since this the setting for this case study is in Chile, so are the laws and things different in another country? We're applying our laws here around special education. What does it look like there? And I know we don't have that information, but it was just something that was in my mind as a question.
I'm glad you picked up on that. I think Dr. Lamb just put that information there as a distractor to see what you would do with it. And we just assume that it's the same rules. I would dare say that most of the other countries have nothing compared to what we have. Unless they are, you know, a country that is like we are. Now, some of the ones that perform better than we do, then they're going to have different ways of doing that. And in one of your courses earlier, you probably did, I don't know, you did not do this, but I have taught a course where you actually studied other countries. And you looked at the ones that are classified as some of the best countries where students learn the most and they do the best on the test. And when you actually dig into them, you find that there's a lot of different rules and a lot of different things. But a lot of countries would not be nearly where we are in trying to teach all children. Matter of fact, they don't. A lot of them do not try to teach all children, which we do, which I'm glad we try. But good point. Glad you caught that. All right. The next group is group 1 of section C4.
That is us, and I will be sharing my screen.
Okay.
Okay, Angelique, did you want to start it off?
Sure. So about the principal's approach, I said that the principal probably needed to state the state and federal law and the district policy concerning special education and inclusion, and also needed to probably think about some professional development on what inclusion looks like. Because of course inclusion can be 2 teachers teaching at the same time, different parts of the lesson, one in small group, one with the whole group. So it can look different, but I think it's necessary for this situation to choose one approach so that the whole school has a guide to go by, but inclusion can be done in a variety of ways.
Okay, so what path Eugenia should take. One of the first things we talked about was that it seemed to be the opinion of the parent association, and she's acting on it. And I think sometimes education changes so much, many things change, and we realize there's better approaches, and that clearly for her to act on that might not have been the most prudent thing to do. Also, you're comparing 2 different classrooms, and there might be a need to take a look to see if there's some clustering of more children with special needs in one class versus another. So you're comparing an apples and oranges, and parents might not understand that, and that might be something you would need to do with placement of students to consider. Also, making some type of school-wide decision on instruction of what that's going to look like, as well as the expectations for all teachers. Like most of the other groups, we felt like that PD was important, but also that there's that monitoring piece that, you know, you have to make sure that the teachers are incorporating those strategies in the classroom. And educating the parent association by virtue of just the fact that they're an organized group should have a clearer understanding of what inclusive education is and how important it is and what differentiation in the classroom looks like. They should really be out front and more visible to be that communication link between parents and the school. And then creating opportunities for parents to come into the classroom and actually see something in action.
And then as far as one point of view, again, the federal law states that all children should receive a free, appropriate public education, and that exceptional children receive education in the least restrictive environment possible. And so the viewpoint needs to be that even though inclusion can look different, true inclusion happens when there's a special educator and a regular education teacher in the room.
That is correct.
Right, so that should be the viewpoint where you have those two teachers in the classroom and then go from there on how you do it.
With question 4, as far as the principal and teachers propose in order to improve the inclusive education program and the appreciation of diversity in the school, we felt like several of the other groups have mentioned, that curriculum night would be helpful, inviting parents to be part of the lesson and not just to see the lesson, but to participate, so they have examples of what scaffolding instruction looks like and enrichment options look like. And, you know, this article or this case study was primarily about the inclusive nature for special needs students. But I think there's those both ends of the spectrum. You've got your students that are your high achievers and high flyers, and what are you doing to meet their needs, and helping parents understand that differentiation is learning for all students. Encouraging them to come to the school during the regular school day to witness for themselves what's going on in the classroom, and then providing research-based articles that help students or help parents have a foundation for why the school is taking the steps that they're taking.
And then question 5 discusses what GWU-MELS could do to help the teachers. And we said he could provide curriculum that includes differentiation and remedial strategies to make sure that all the students are learning. Help provide training for the teachers on what differentiation is and how you can incorporate that in your classroom. And another big thing was peer observations, because if you know another teacher is using differentiation, well, allow those teachers to go in there and see for themselves how it's working and what you do, instead of just saying, okay, this is what you should do. Well, let them see it.
Okay. The next slide deals with question 6, where it's asking what might Sylvia take with the families of the children in question, and what can be done to basically share the students' achievements and learning experiences. And one of the things that we concluded was to facilitate an individual parent-student conference where you basically invite the families in to discuss what their student is actually doing in class and show them the student's work, as well as present the data to the families and explain, you know, the growth of the student from the beginning to that current period of time. Another thing, of course, is to invite the families into the classroom. And we said that earlier, but definitely invite them in. A great opportunity would have been for the principal when she was, you know, when the issue was brought to her, was to actually suggest that the parents come and maybe even do, you know, tours. And I wouldn't do this blindsidedly without first informing the teachers of this procedure or this action, but definitely invite the families in so they can see, you know, maybe do small groups where they can come in and just observe. And if they have questions at that time, by the principal being present, they can pretty much direct the questions to the principal to hopefully answer, or when a moment presents itself, even ask the teacher. And then the last suggestion or recommendation would be, you know, present and showcase the work of all students during an academic gallery walk night. It's always good to show work and then put it on display so parents can see, you know, what the students are doing, and even hear them, you know, share how the different things they're learning in class, and how they may have created a particular project, or how something was created in conjunction with a peer. So all of those would be definitely recommendations that we think that Silva, the teacher, could actually do.
Right, you all brought out some good points, and you all have mentioned Ishmael, and I kept looking, trying to find where I remembered his age. Now, this is one of the issues that you run into sometimes. It says Ishmael was a 27-year-old. He had 2 years experience in the position, so he started at 25. He had been a university professor, and he had more than one advanced degree. So, you know, if he was a university professor with advanced degrees, he's just barely out of the classroom, even though he was probably, as a university professor, if it's like here, he was like an assistant who was signed the job to teach while he was working on his doctorate or one of the advanced degrees. So, you know, a lot of times an older teacher, and it says Sylvia was 50, an older teacher would not necessarily really think he knew what he was doing, if that makes any sense. So you have to look at all of the dynamics in that situation and really pay attention to all those pieces. If Ishmael had the right personality, he could get along with any of them, and they'd all work with him. But that would be one of the things that, you know, if he wasn't being listened to real well, it was because some of them thought he was too young to know what he was doing. So just wanted to throw that out just for you to think about. All right, I believe we have one more group, section C2, group 4. Who is that?
That's our group.
That's our group.
All right.
Warn everybody, I have a sleepy 1-year-old, so you guys will hear Baby Shark, but please just get through it. I won't hurt him.
We will be fine.
Okay. All right, Melissa, you want to share your screen because he's being a fussy butt?
Yes, ma'am. Uh-oh. What is it doing? Oh, did it share?
Yes, it's sharing.
Okay. It looks different on this side. Okay. All right. So the principal approach with teachers, I diverted back to the law. What does the law say about this? Least restrictive environment, accommodations, IEPs. What does the IEP say that the student should receive? It's not necessary to choose one approach. Each of the approaches has its own benefits and could be utilized to help strengthen either one of them.
In addition to the law, I couldn't see what were the laws in Chile. So yes, we're talking about our laws here, but are the laws there the same? Like, what were their laws? So that got, as we were having our Zoom, that was one of the things that really kept eating at the back of my mind was, well, what are their laws and how come that isn't considered?
All right. The path Eugenia should take. Consult with the general education teachers and the integration programs team of specialists. I'd never heard of it called that, so that was interesting. What is written in the student's IEP? What accommodations does the student receive? General education teachers still provide all students with Tier 1 instruction. We also said that general education teachers will and should provide those accommodations to the special education students In a perfect world, it would be full inclusion with your special education teacher and your general education teacher working hand in hand. But unfortunately, this is not a perfect world. And just in my school, my students with IEPs they're in the general education classroom with me, but they're taken out to receive those extra services with an EC teacher. But in a perfect world, we'd be together and we'd bounce ideas off each other and work together to help those students grow. Okay. Point of view. Neither point of view is better than the other. The teacher should utilize both approaches to really see the special education students grow. Collaboration. We talked about having informational sessions with all parents to discuss the program, provide all parents with information about what it is and how it relates to the mission of the school. Some of the parents may just not understand, so therefore they are against it to begin with, and maybe if they understood, they would understand more. Have the school counselor discuss the importance of accepting everyone and diversity. And also discuss the law that no matter what the situation is, all students should receive the appropriate education. And then the effects of peer tutoring and student experts on academic success. Just because the parents aren't necessarily, may not be seeing the effects of it, the students are growing. The students who are tutoring are already mastered those skills. So they are already little experts in that area. So they're helping the other students do that, because Squancher and I talked about if students were only in classes that were only the same ability, that they wouldn't be able to grow, because they would have no one to push them to grow further.
And in the case study, it did, and I don't remember the names, but it mentioned the best way to show mastery of a concept is if you can teach it. So clearly, if they can teach what they're learning to their peers, and that shows that they understand it, but it also works for the special or the EC student who can then get the concept from someone of their peer group, which could be a barrier. Sometimes EC students sometimes feel, intimidated. And so, peer tutoring, there are benefits there. And so I think that's something that should be discussed. And like many of the other teams have said, seeing things in action. I think once families and parents see these type of classes in action, they may be a little less resistant. Yeah. They may be a little less resistant to their what they're feeling. I'm sorry, I'm distracted here.
Integration of ideas, provide professional development, model both approaches, how it would look, and what does it look like in the classroom. Modeling is definitely important. I can tell you all day long how to do something, but if I don't show you how to do it, then it's useless. So modeling the approaches is important. What does it look like in the classroom? Families, the achievements and experiences. Share success stories with the families. Instead of just peer tutoring, those students can receive enrichment activities. So if the parents of the higher students were questioning if the students were growing more, then I would suggest providing those students with enrichment activities so that the parents could see that their students, they've already mastered it, so they're getting something more challenging to push them as well. So to provide enrichment or remediation to all students.
Okay. You all did a good job with the information that you've shared. Unless it is changed, do you know which group makes the least growth in North Carolina on the end of course and test and grade tests? Do you know?
It's your higher students, or either your
4s and 5s.
It's the AIG students usually who make the least growth. They're at the top. They just don't make growth. So that's one of the issues that most schools have to deal with. when you were looking at this particular case study, was there anything about the way that all occurred that you thought, I don't think this would happen in my school? Was there anything that sort of surprised you about the way it came about? Does your PTA usually take that active a role in going to the principal and telling them about how they want classroom instruction to go? Some schools it is, and others it isn't. So, you know, that's just one of those things that it depends on your school and how things are. All right, do you have any other questions or any thoughts for tonight? Okay, I will stop the recording and I will say good night. And if anyone wants to stay on and talk with me for a minute or two, I will not end the whole thing. I'll just stop the recording. All right, that okay? I will see you next week, and thank you so much. And the next time we do a case study, look for different instructions from what you have. I'll split it up or do something so that you all don't have to do this exact same presentation, okay? All right.